Do you have a favorite building up there?
Whew, boy. I'm a big fan of J.E.R. Carpenter. And, yes, we just sold at 1175th, which is actually on 98th Street. But J.E. Carpenter does these buildings across the street from one another on these two corners. So there's 1165, 1170. So just down the street, you have 1115, 1120. Beautiful old, beautiful architecture, beautiful facades, and then these massive apartments. Very traditional, but Jerry Carpenter was known for his separation of public and private spaces, extra high ceilings, so all of them pretty much have the 10-foot ceilings. They're really beautiful, beautiful layouts. And of course, they're on Fifth Avenue, so you get those stunning views over the park.
Welcome to the John and Jonathan Sell NYC podcast, where experienced expert New York City real estate brokers John Gasdaska and Jonathan Conlon break down what's happening in the market, what you need to know whether you're a buyer, seller, or agent, and their insight into the future with a little bit of fun along the way. Carnegie Hill, bordered by Central Park and 3rd Avenue, is an absolutely beautiful part of Manhattan. In this episode, John and Jonathan are speaking about all the best features, attractions, and types of properties you can expect to find here. Stay tuned for the recommendations and be sure to check out the show notes for even more.
Hey everybody, welcome back to John and Jonathan Sell NYC. How are you, Mr. Gasdaska?
I'm doing great, Conlon. You? I'm calling you Conlon. I'm leaving the go with the Mister today. I'm doing great. Yourself, Jonathan? Johnny boy?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I would say the biggest win for the week is that we got one of our deals in contract.
It was my win!
Last night, and it was a difficult birth, as one of our partners likes to use that phrase. And
it was.
Yes, due to one of the players involved made it very challenging, which we've talked about in other podcasts, but I'm going to leave it at that.
So you took my win, but that was a great win for the team. But then we closed a great transaction yesterday that I worked on. And wonderful buyers. And that was a deal on the other side of the spectrum. That was flawless. It happened very quickly. All the parties involved were doing what they needed to do. And it was
every now and then
a real pleasant experience.
We get one that has good people involved, has good brokers, good attorneys, nice clients, and it kind of goes through without any big trip ups, any big dramatic flares, etc. But
seamless.
I'll tell you, 2020, that might be our only one. That might be the one for the year.
Every single transaction has serious complications in it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to step back and go out and smell the roses.
And what a lovely apartment. I mean, I showed it to, oddly enough, and this happens sometimes, but I showed it to buyers that I was out working with. You showed it to buyers
before we were in contract.
Before you were in contract, before you made an offer on it.
It was almost the end of Gasdaska Conlon. Yeah. You know, if you would have been on that thing and screwed my deal up, I would not have been able to be doing this right now with you. Thank God. But I called you. I said, your buyers don't want it, do they? They said, he said, no, he loves it, but he's not going to buy anything now. Yes.
Yeah, it was too much of a lateral move for them, but beautiful space. I mean, he really liked it. It was a lovely Tribeca apartment. That view was, it's interesting. Every now and then you run into these views that you have never seen. Even all the view apartments you and I have been in collectively, but me individually, and you walk in, you're like, the city looks different because it's just a different angle. And Tribeca is one of those neighborhoods where their buildings aren't very tall and you don't get these big crazy views except from a few particular buildings.
But what made it special is the terrace. But I digress. Had a great terrace.
That's not what we're talking about today.
Let's talk about Carnegie Hill.
Carnegie Hill. So I got to tell you,
Carnegie Hill, my favorite part of the Upper East Side.
So the boundaries of Carnegie Hill are basically 86th to 96th Street on the Upper East Side from 5th Avenue till 3rd Avenue.
Do you know what it was called before Carnegie Hill? Don't look.
The Upper East Side.
No, Prospect Hill. It was called Prospect Hill. And do you know when it turned to Carnegie Hill? No, you don't.
Probably the early.
Andrew Carnegie the famous banker, when he moved into Carnegie Hill, that's when it became chic. That's when it became Carnegie Hill. One of the things that I love about Carnegie Hill is that it's a small area of the Upper East Side, and it has some of the most incredible townhouses. It has beautiful, beautiful co-ops up there. Just like my area of the Upper West Side that I live northwest, like almost by Morningside Park, Morningside Heights, Carnegie Hill is northern. So it's not as trafficked. It's not as busy as the main part of, as the central Upper East Side. That's what I love about it. It also has great museums like the Guggenheim and great cultural events like the cultural institutions like the 92nd Street Y. It has some incredible mansions up there and townhouses, as well as beautiful, beautiful pre-war co-ops. But the northern section of Carnegie Hill, closer to 96, even going to 97th, 98th Street on that Fifth Avenue corridor, which was once more recognized as a less fashionable neighborhood, is now a really coveted neighborhood. And when I say that, there are fantastic places to reside. Those streets between 5th and Madison Avenue are some of the most beautiful streets, even between Madison and Park Avenue, beautiful streets on the Upper East Side. Mm-hmm. And what's become really fashionable, which you'll talk about in a minute, is that Madison Avenue corridor that is really houses some of these unbelievable restaurants that have come about. And then the only other thing that I say is that the celebrities that have lived up there. So not only Andrew Carnegie, but Marjorie Merriweather Post, Margaret Rockefeller Strong, Woody Allen. He made Carnegie Hill very, very famous. With Elaine's up in Carnegie Hill, in all of his movies, they're always at Elaine's. Heads of companies. A lot of CEOs will live up there. Chanel, JP Morgan, but Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward. Those kinds of celebs would live up there. And there's countless more.
And of course, one of the biggest draws up there is you're right next to the park. So you're west of 3rd Avenue. 86 and 96, like you said, is a little bit quieter neighborhood. There's not as much, except on Lexington. You have all your services and dry cleaners and, some restaurants and delis and those sorts of things. But most of the time when people think of Carnegie Hill, they think of Park, 5th Avenue, Madison, that sort of area up there for its residential buildings, some beautiful old co-op, pre-war co-ops. J.E. Carpenter has some sister buildings in there. And such, and then Central Park, always one of the biggest draws, especially these days, people wanting that outdoor space and that escape to nature. So in addition to Central Park, obviously one of the major attractions, like you mentioned, Guggenheim Museum, you've got the Neue Gallery. Some people pronounce it differently, but the Neue Gallery on 86th. You've got the Jewish Museum, et cetera. But one of the biggest draws to the area are all of what most people deem, or a lot of people deem, these really coveted private schools. Very challenging to get into, very expensive to send your kids to. But you have not only good public schools as well, but there's all these schools that even non-New Yorkers hear about. The Spence, you've got Nightingale, St. Bernard's, Ignatius, Marymount, Ramaz School, Trevor Day School, Dalton. All of these are in that little neck of the woods. So it is a huge draw. You have these massive pre-war co-ops with really big 8, 9, 10, 11-room apartments that can fit people with children. And the schools are in the area that are deemed always rated very highly on some of the individual ratings. Of course, we can't attest to how good a school is, but a lot of people are drawn up to the neighborhood for that. Also, that quietness that you mentioned and being close to the park allows for a little bit more sort of decompressing from a lot of these demanding jobs that these people have in order to be able to afford the large apartments and the expensive schools in the area. It helps them decompress at the end of the day and get to a little bit slower paced neighborhood. So there's also a lot of dining, which I know is one of your favorite topics. So what are your favorite dining spots? And don't forget desserts, because I know you've got a few of those sprinkled in there somewhere.
I'll tell you, I would not call Carnegie Hill the dessert capital. There is, the Pain Quotidien is up there. I know, but Sarah Beth's was always one of my favorite restaurants. The Hotel Wales, right on like that low 90s corridor on Madison Avenue. But one of the things that's happened, I think, over the past maybe 5 years is a lot of additional restaurants in that Madison Avenue corridor. And for those who don't know Carnegie Hill, it's very residential up there. So to have the restaurants on Madison, which is so close to Fifth Avenue and sandwiched in between Fifth and Park, that's really wonderful. So there's Paola's, Table d'Hôte, Pascalou. So in addition to the restaurants, there's wonderful bars. There's wine bars, Bacata Wine Bar, Earl's Beef and Cheese, the Weir, Calla Wine Bar. I don't know them. I don't go to the bars, but also the bakeries up there. So let's talk about that. Now, the one thing that I forgot about is the Corner Cafe and Bakery. Maison Kaiser's up there, and Maison Kaiser is really quite lovely. And then you have these small, also, this is quintessential upper Carnegie Hill. These wonderful mom and pop shops, that corner bookstore on 93rd Street. Mm-hmm. That's charming. It brings you back to You've Got Mail. Anybody that's seen that, I'm dating myself. But also the wonderful gourmet coffee shops, etc. That's what makes Carnegie Hill so rich, fantastically beautiful and lovely and vibrant.
So transportation, you have the 4, 5, and 6, which run up Lexington. Now we have the 2nd Avenue subway, which stops at both 86th Street and 96th Street. So that's really, of course, it's over on 2nd Avenue, so it's outside of Carnegie Hill. But that Q line is quite convenient, even if you live closer to the park and you work in Midtown in the middle of the city or on the west side Midtown. It makes it much easier to get up to Carnegie Hill. And then you have all the bus lines. It's very popular to transverse through the park from the Upper West Side. And like the schools I mentioned, you have a lot of Upper West Siders that have their kids that go to those schools, and they just come across the park in a bus.
And vice versa. The East Siders that have their kids on the West Side.
Yeah. So, and then the beautiful real estate. We've talked about that throughout. But there's some beautiful old pre-war 1920s, early 1900
what's a favorite building up there? Do you have a favorite building up there?
Whew, boy. I'm a big fan of J.E.R. Carpenter. And, yes, we just sold at 1175th, which is actually on 98th Street. But J.E. Carpenter does these buildings across the street from one another on these two corners. So there's 1165, 1170. So just down the street, you have 1115, 1120. Beautiful old, beautiful architecture, beautiful facades, and then these massive apartments. Very traditional, but Jerry Carpenter was known for his separation of public and private spaces, extra high ceilings. So all of them pretty much have the 10-foot ceilings. They're really beautiful, beautiful layouts. And of course, they're on Fifth Avenue, so you get those stunning views over the park. How about yourself?
Don't forget 1148 Fifth, which I love that building so much. They have great apartments there. 1220 Park, which we've sold in. 1185 Park, 1172 Park, 1192 Park. There's countless really, really phenomenal buildings up there. But then also the houses, which are really special. On that 95th between 5th and Madison, 94th, 93rd Street. I've sold even in some of the cut-up townhouses. But those houses that are there, I just walk by them and I just say, yeah, I could live here.
You'd
Anyway.
never use most of the rooms in it, but you could live there.
Sure, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, and it's going to, depending, obviously, your Fifth Avenue corridor up there versus Fifth Avenue further down, it's the value neighborhood on Fifth.
Yeah.
Let's face it. And then even on Park, though, your money's going to go further north of 96th Street, north of 86th Street than it would further down. So 1045
we also have 1045 Park, which we have a listing in right now.
Oh, that's right. 1045 and 1050 Fifth.
1050 Fifth. We have a big one coming on in the spring.
And we have 2 apartments there.
We have another one coming on today.
1045 Park.
There have been some new developments in the area. There's you go to Lexington and 86th Street. There's a building called the Hayworth. There's the Phillips House, which is a little bit further north on 88th Street.
So so there's great real estate up there, and there's, depending on where one's looking, great values. So because
you have all these bigger apartments up there, they do, and it is a little bit more of a value play, although it's still expensive real estate. These days, those big apartments, are struggling a bit because of COVID. You've got, the higher price points are struggling a bit, a bit more than the rest of the market. So
great value.
Great value. You've got a lot of inventory up there on the market, and some beautiful product. The issue is, a lot of times with these Carnegie Hill properties, is people move in there and they stay there for 20, 30, 40 years. I was in one the other day with our clients that we're both working with. The apartment was lived in for 61 years.
Yeah, that's
longest I've ever walked through. 61 years in the same family. Amazing. Amazing apartment. So
great bones.
Great bones.
Most of those apartments come available several $1 million, and they have great bones. So you have to put in another $1 million to $2 million to get them up to modern standards. But like you said, then there are these Grand Dame apartments. So thank you all for watching the John and Jonathan Sell NYC podcast. We have had a blast, and sadly, this is going to be our last episode until the new year, but then we're going to be coming with gangbusters in 2021, right? Yep. And we're going to be ready to go. So with that, we wish everybody the happiest of holidays. Remain safe and healthy. Most of all, remain in gratitude. And I believe 2021 is going to be a far more productive and happier year.
We can only go up from here.
That's right.
But we're starting it off right with the numbers from the last quarter. And I do think, listen, we've got a lot of things coming down the pipeline. It's going to be interesting either way. And always a pleasure, John. Everybody have a wonderful holiday and be safe. As John said, stay in small groups, stay vigilant. Let's
wear your masks.
COVID in the body.
Do not go on the airplanes. And we'll see you all healthy and safe in 2021.
Thanks for watching or listening to the John and Jonathan Sell NYC podcast. If you want to find us online or sign up to get our monthly and quarterly market stats, come on over to our website, johnandjonathansellnyc.com, or find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and everywhere else with the handle @JohnandJonathanSellNYC. And if you want to grab the show notes, go to johnandjonathansellnyc.com/podcast. If this show was entertaining, helpful, or informative, consider telling friends or family or leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. Those are some of the best ways of supporting our efforts, and we would greatly appreciate it. Thank you again for tuning in. We can't wait to share what's coming up next, so subscribe to the podcast to make sure you don't miss our next episode, and we'll see you next time.